I mean,
I got to shovel some more snow.
yo, this kid's got like a sixth sense. I swear to God. Earlier, she's napping, and I'm looking at her on the monitor, eyes closed. We're good, like a fucking cartoon. I sit down and I turn on the Xbox controller. Her fucking eyes open. She's like, like what the hell, man?
Why does she sound
Uh,
like a 1940s gangster?
she is a gangster, man. She fucking controls my life, dude. Fucking orders me around like I owe her money.
Manny, is everything
Deep,
okay? You
deep
look
is
I'm
just
just
like
tired. I'm
you look
tired.
you look a little distraught, man. You want to
Yeah.
talk about it?
It's not. It
Do you want to
wasn't
talk
too.
about video games?
Sure. Let's do that.
oh my goodness.
I'm looking. I'm not looking forward to all the snow I have to shovel after this.
Yeah, what are you talking about, man? We're only getting like 1,000 fucking inches of snow.
Anyways, welcome back to another episode of Not Quite High Score. My name is Manny, and as per usual, I'm joined with my cousins Jazz and Taz. Boys, say hi.
Hey, yo,
Hello.
what up, Jazz? The
Hey,
man
what
with
up, boo?
the man with the ass that just won't quit.
Man, this is already off the rails.
Hey, man, we all have our quirks, man. You got that booty, deep past his third leg, certified fucking third leg, confirmed. I won't say how, but we all know it. And
we all admire it.
Dude,
I,
I'm too tired for this, and not drunk enough for this. And what about
oh,
you, Taz? What's your quirk?
I'm a father now, man. I'm a responsible adult. That's it.
That's a
Game
fucking
over.
lie.
I don't play video games anymore. I just do this. I follow them, but I don't play them. Who has the time?
So we'll be going over Sony's recent state of play and discussing the uncertain future of Warner Bros. Games.
Warner Bros.
Well, yeah, well, that's how I talk. We'll be also introducing a new segment as well as rounding up the podcast with a discussion about Nintendo and what we think they're doing right and other developers and publishers are getting wrong. And so, before we start, how's everyone been? Besides Taz and you and your child dilemmas?
Yeah, they're not dilemmas. I love this kid. Don't get me wrong. It has been. I'm on day 3 right now of like the wife has a course that she's taking for work, so she hasn't been home. And yeah, man, it's just time flies with a kid in a good and well, not in a bad way, but get up, feed her, put her for a nap, get shit done around the house while she's sleeping. She's up, all right, change diapers, another feed, another nap, play with her, get the tummy time in, just read her a book, do whatever. Oh shit, now it's time for another feed. Okay, cool. You farted like 7 times. Let me check your diaper. By the way, guys, my child has not taken a shit since Friday.
That's alarming.
She's legitimately a adorable little fucking time bomb right now because like
When you least expect it, man.
dude, her
Yeah.
I don't yeah, because she's had blowouts. You know what I mean? So like her diaper, it don't always do its job very well.
When you're finally gonna sit down and decide to play Avowed or something, that's when it's all gonna come out.
Exactly.
No man, it's gonna come out in the car seat. The car seat is like her favorite place to just take a fucking
Oh my
shit
lord.
and have it
It's
just like come out the back.
it's I forgot the word is, but it's almost like sweet justice for all the times you used to hotbox your car with us in it.
That was out of love, man.
I don't know if I'd call it out of love. It's more
We talk about it to this
inhumane.
day. I created a
A
core
monster.
memory for you with my ass. Okay? And it lives on forever. Just like that time I took Manu's face, put it up my butt, and I farted on it.
Oh my God. Okay, Maddie,
I was not a good cousin.
reel us back in, man. Tell us what you're playing.
I've been playing the Elden Ring.
Manny's like, shit, I have to course correct. All right, hold on.
I've been playing the Elden Ring Night Rain. So I got accepted into their network beta test thing, and I've never had so much fun getting my ass kicked in. And this is coming from someone who's never played Elden Ring before. It's the best way I can describe this game is a roguelike Elden Ring with like battle royale elements. In the sense that it doesn't have any PvP. It's purely PvE. And so when you're starting the run, you're choosing one of 4 classes. And it's up to 3 players, and you're dropping into this world, and you're expected to kind of level up, hunt, explore, gather items until it reaches nighttime. And when nighttime hits, the map starts closing in, and it kind of forces you to go to a specific location where you have to fight a boss. And that's where it gets interesting because it has a 3 day, 3 night cycle for a single run. During the day, if you die, after a couple seconds, you'll just revive somewhere close, or your allies can hit you a couple times and you'll just get back up. During the night,
Do you lose your equipment when you die?
you don't. You do lose a level, but it's really easy to level up in this game. Um, During the night, however, if you do die, same concept. Someone has to come up and hit you to get you back up. However, you don't automatically respawn. So if your entire team goes down, then it's game over. I haven't been able to get past the first night, but I can say that the more I'm playing, the more I'm kind of familiarizing myself with the class. So I've been playing with the Guardian class, and it's like this very tanky uh, bird like character who has like a giant halberd and a shield.
Wait, so are these sort of pre-made characters you start with specifically made for this multiplayer, or are these the same
Exactly.
classes that
Yeah.
are
So it's going
available?
to be like pre-made classes, and before the run, you're going to select your class, and then you just jump into it.
I have two questions for you.
Shoot.
One is more of a general question, and like, how does it compare to the base game in terms of difficulty? Like, is it harder? Do you find that it's more balanced, or does it
Um,
offer like a different kind of challenge?
so I haven't played Elden Ring, so I can't comment on that. In terms of difficulty, I feel like it scales because of the fact that it's like you're in this world with 3 players, but the majority of the challenge doesn't lie when you're like exploring the world or dealing with enemies. It's really just the mini bosses and the boss. And throughout the world, you're going to find plenty of mini bosses, and that's kind of one of the challenges you face up until nighttime when you're going to face the big boss.
So I know. So I'm glad you mentioned the bosses because this is more of a combat and mechanics question. But like, from software, they're known for like their epic boss designs and their battles.
Yes.
So has there been any standout fights so far? Like, has there been something that has kind of give you like an oh shit moment?
On well, interesting. So nothing's really. I haven't gotten far enough in the game, and I've been trying not to be spoiled. So none of the bosses and enemies that I've seen stand out from your typical Dark Souls or Elden Ring game. However, it is fun to kind of walk around, and I'm like in a church, and suddenly I drop down and I'm surrounded by like these priests wielding like fire torches, and then I'm getting attacked, and then my allies have to come and help me. And then we turn the corner, and there's a mini boss just waiting for us to kind of step in the room, and then a fight's gonna uh, get initiated.
So when you guys drop in, are you all dropping in together, or do you
Yes.
all kind of pick where you want to individually?
So when you're kind of you have an eagle you're attached to, like a magical eagle, and then you get them you kind of fly around for a tiny bit, and then it just drops all of you.
Okay. And is it, in terms of the map, I'm guessing it's the same overworld map as, or overworld, it's the same map as the base game, but are you, or is it a specific map made for
I
this?
think
And
it's
if it
different.
is
I
the
think
same,
I haven't seen once again haven't played Elden Ring, but from what I've heard, different map altogether.
okay.
In terms of when you're walking around, there's no fall damage. There's a lot you can just climb, and you're kind of expected to running around. And there's even like these spots where like it's kind of gushes out wind or energy, and when you like interact with this geyser, you're flown into year super high, and like it lets you access like really high cliffs or buildings.
Okay. That was in the base game too, actually. So
Hmm.
that's
Okay.
not anything specific to this.
Does it
But
make you want to play the base game? Because I know, like you mentioned that you haven't played Elden Ring, so I'm just kind of
Yes.
wondering if it kind of gives you
I
that
don't
itch.
know. I signed up more out of curiosity than wanting to actually play this on release, but after trying it, I'm more hopeful. I think if I have 2 people that are asking me to join them, I would consider getting the game on release. And one thing was really interesting was that when I started the game, I didn't really know what to interact with, so I would just start a match, jump into it, and then learn as I went. But then eventually I found a training grounds around the central hub, and then the way they did that was really cool because you can switch between the classes as you're training, but then you can also choose pretty much between every weapon and shield available in the game, and so you can practice with that as well. And so it's not one of those games where it's you just learn as you go. You can also take the time needed to kind of train, get familiar with the character, and then you can jump in.
I mean, I know it's limited. It's an alpha, I think, is what it is,
Kind
right?
of,
Or is
yeah.
it a
It's
beta?
it's still very much in development.
But I mean, do you see this becoming something as sort of like the next big online game that's there to stay, considering the
Yeah,
fervor that people have for the Souls sort of
I
games and
think
this
it
whole franchise altogether? Or do you
I think
think it's
it will depend on what their content release roadmap looks like, because to a certain extent
Mhm.
it will get stale. While the rogue like elements could add a lot of replayability, I don't think it could feasibly. If you have the same map for a year, people are gonna get bored, for instance. So that's why you should be switching up the enemies. So far, I've had to face the same bosses in the areas we walked into. We've had the uh, same nighttime bosses. The only difference where it comes in the roguelike were the equipment we were picking up. And then as you're also playing, you're picking up relics as well, which provide passive and active boost for future runs.
so do we think that this is going to eventually become another one of those microtransactions with a battle pass and so on and so forth? Because I mean, that seems to be anything that's multiplayer these days. It's like that formula.
It could be, but it's not really From Software's MO to do that.
I was gonna say, yeah, it doesn't seem like. I mean, they haven't really gone down that path
Right.
yet, right? So I guess I'd say you're cautiously optimistic that
I am.
they'll kind of steer away from that.
Well, I mean, there
And
has to be some sort of a revenue source, right? Like you're not just like is this? I'm guessing it'll be sold separately, but you know,
I
I
can
don't know.
imagine this as seasonal content, so like a battle pass thing, but then battle pass could also introduce more maps, or
Hmm.
maybe it changes the entire game every season. And I think that's a good way to approach it. And it never really seemed like From Software's ever been hurting for money. Yes, they want to maximize. Maybe their shareholders want to maximize on their revenue, but I think they have a potential golden egg here. And if they execute it well, then I could see it doing just as well. Maybe not as well as Elden Ring did, but close enough. And
No,
this
that's
was
Yeah.
awesome.
just from the network test. Like I play this, I walked in with zero expectations, zero knowledge of the game, and I was pleasantly surprised how well everything executed. Taz and I were talking about this before, and you were telling me that there were server issues and network issues people had with prior tests, but none whatsoever as of when I started playing it on Friday.
Well, it's gonna be interesting, to see you talk about it again in 2 weeks. Because obviously you'll have played, a couple more hours, and maybe, it'll be interesting
So
to see if.
unfortunately, not. It's a very limited
Oh,
network test,
that's
so I think I
okay.
just have another day before it's going to be
Hmm.
over.
It's kind of hard to not see this doing well, right? Because I
But
mean,
that's yeah.
it's based on Elden Ring. That game sold bananas. People love it. People still play it to this day. You go on Twitch, it's still one of the most watched games. So it's clearly still like in the everyday zeitgeist of gaming. And and it's established that this game is incredible. People love this kind of game. They love Miyazaki. They love everything he puts out. They love the studio. They love the franchise, whether it's this or Souls and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
they pretty much have everything going for them, and it's going to take something massive to just basically screw this up. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take for this to fail. I just don't see it failing. If it's something that's, it's a multiplayer experience. I mean, people modded multiplayer into Elden Ring so that they can play together with their friends. This is maybe not that exact same thing because
Hmm.
it's not the base game being played multiplayer, but it's still an experience, an official experience in multiplayer.
Right.
So they have, I guess, everything to gain and everything to lose, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if they stay true to their formula, then I think they have a winner, on end. Bless you.
Um,
Oh boy.
I would be tempted. Well, not tempted. Sorry, I'm curious to know both of your opinions on this game. So maybe if they do have an open beta going on, all three of us can hop in together and see how
I
that
mean,
goes. It's gonna go
Listen,
horrible.
I have such little interest in these games. I bought into the hype and
yeah.
I got Elden Ring, and I will
Hmm.
fully admit it is a very good. I like the gameplay. I like just the world and everything. I just don't have it in me right now to get my shit kicked in constantly before I can learn enemy patterns and things like that. Like I know if I put the work in, I could do it. I just kind of don't want to do that right now. And these games, they demand so much patience, and I can't. I'd rather the little time I have these days to be gaming in between all the other things that are happening right now. I'd rather just put it towards something where I know that even if it's only a half hour that I have to play, that I can make some form of progress in that half an hour.
Exactly. You
Right.
don't have to feel like, okay, well, I'm playing this game only to be frustrated and whatnot. So
Well, so it didn't
yeah,
feel as frustrating. Maybe I just have a different threshold when it comes to these type of games compared to you guys, but it it was satisfying seeing that bit of progression every single run as you understand the game better, as you understand your class better and the bosses better. But compared to playing like a Dark Souls game, it did feel a lot less daunting just because you're not alone in this.
I would say never. Honestly, like if we're enough people, then maybe I'd be
Mm.
inclined to try it out. Look. I was gonna talk about playing Prince of Persia right now, The Lost Crown, and one of the first things you said were like, oh yeah, that's weird because it's not really your type of game. So I guess it's true. Like I mean, it's a Metroidvania feeling game, and I think I played Hollow Knight, and it's not like I've played a lot of the Metroidvania games before, but
Did you
I'm trying to
finish
branch
Hollow Knight?
out. Yes, I did actually.
Okay.
I finished Hollow Knight. I'm super excited for Silk Song whenever the hell it comes out. But yeah, so I'm trying to branch out, and one of the things that and again, like I'm only an hour and a half into this game, but one of the things that I've already noticed is how insanely fluid this game is in terms of platforming. Right, like I'm still getting used to the combat and the traversal mechanics, but it's clear that like it's going to require precision and timing, and like that's going to be key in this game. I found that the movement was like super buttery smooth, and the way that you can chain jump and wall run and do dashes together, it just feels like it feels super great. And even combat wise, like I found that it was extremely fast and responsive. And but again, like it is something new for me. So when you do talk about Night Rain, look, if we're enough people, maybe I'll I'll jump into it. But Souls like games have never been my cup of tea. But yeah, like I'm hoping to share more about Prince of Persia, the Lost Crown, in 2 weeks. But so far, I love the whole exploration. I know it's going to be a big thing as well. Like I've already hit a few areas where I can see something that I want to reach, but I still can't. So it's like the classic Metroidvania teasing. Um, but I like the way that everything is done. Like even like the map, and you know what, the fact that there's like they cater to different types of players. Like if you want like a full challenge, like you can do that. Or if you want to focus just on the story aspect of it, right? With like enemies being like more gentle on you, like you can also play it that way. I'm just playing like the regular way. And yeah,
I'm
like I've gotten my
surprised
ass
though,
kicked,
like
but
that, because like it's not to say that, well, because Souls like game requires pattern recognition,
yes.
kind in a sense. Uh, you can't just like go guns of glory. And with Persia: The Lost Crown, I did play it as well. I didn't get super far, but from the 5 to 10 hours I did play it, some of the bosses are like that. You can't just, because there's a lot of timing, there's a lot of countering you have to kind of get down as well.
I still
So
feel like it's a baby step towards possible Souls like games. So
okay,
I do want to try them out because like you're not the only. I have a lot of people that are like, you need to play the Souls games, right? Like you need to start with Sekiro and then you go. And I just haven't been able to do it, and so I figured why not start with these games. Like I said, I was able to finish Hollow Knight just fine. It was a challenge, but it was amazing. And so far, same thing with the Lost Crown. Like it definitely feels like something that's up my alley. And while it is a challenge, I still have fun because Taz is right. Like I mean, sometimes I'm sitting down and I'm playing for 30 minutes, but I feel like I was able to go from like one level to another in that 30 minutes. It didn't feel like I was just kind of frustrating myself and not kind of going anywhere and just kind of being back to like the same spot that I started. So I guess from that perspective, I do feel like I'm making progress, and that's why I continue playing it. But like I said, like
so
it's only
the
an hour and
last
a
thing I'll
half.
say about Night Rain before we put that to rest is that because it is a roguelike game, there is that sense of progression because after every runs you do unlock relics and you do equip those relics per class, and they do provide a sort of buff as they are, and
Hmm.
that's what they basically do.
No, for sure. Taz, are you playing anything besides?
I mean, I rolled credits on Metaphor, uh, 10 on 10. If you like
Nice.
RPGs, do yourself
Nice.
the favor, go play it. I'm not going to get into it any more than that because, I mean, at this point, with all the other outlets that have talked about it as much as they have, there's nothing left to say. I did play the demo though for Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Um,
Okay, hold on. You got to break that down for me. What the hell is that?
so you know how Assassin's Creed Black Flag came out back in what was this 2013?
13? Yeah.
That was the one with the naval ships.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It had the ship
Okay.
battles, and everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Yo, this would make a sick game on its own."
Right.
Right? Like if you're just a pirate and you go around place to place and there's fights and all that stuff, right? Like without all the assassin stuff necessarily. And then Ubisoft came and they made Skull and Bones, and that took them like 16 years to develop, and nothing really came of it. And that game sucks, and you kind of forget that it even exists at this point. Um,
It pales to Sea of Thieves.
yeah. So then basically, the studio behind Yakuza saw that, and they were like, "Yo, we'll do it. Don't worry about it." And then they give you this sick fucking pirate game. It's got ship battles, and they're very
Hmm.
similar. You get to do a couple of fights actually in the demo. Um, it's very similar to how Black Flag was. So the ship kind of controls more or less similarly. Then you have the guns on either side of the boat, and you have to position yourself in order to fire off on your enemy, and you have to wait for them to recharge, and then the power and sort of a lot of stats behind your ship and its attack power and all that depend on the crew that you hire. So I'm guessing over the course of the game, you're going to be sort of recruiting people to be part of your crew, and then you have to pick
Hmm.
and choose who's part of it and all that stuff. But anyways, just there's that aspect to it, which is great, and then obviously you're customizing your ship and all that stuff. Uh,
Is this
big
a standalone game or is this like a DLC to the
It's a
one of the
standalone
Yakuza
game.
games? Okay.
It's
Well,
a
okay,
it's a
so,
standalone game. It's and in this you're not playing. So the Yakuza series, initially you would start playing as Kazuma Kiryu, and then it branched off when his story kind of more or less ended, and then it became the turn-based series like a Dragon, which is what it's known as now because they don't want to use the term Yakuza anymore. I forget what the reason for that was, but and then there's a new protagonist as part of that new series. His name is Ichiban Kasuga. Now in this game, you're playing as Goro Majima. He's someone that's been around in essentially every single Yakuza game. Um, he's sort of this just crazy gangster. He has like this. He's almost like he's the Joker, except he's a good guy. Um,
Okay.
and the only time you did get to play as him was in Yakuza Zero, which that came out back in I think like 2015. I want to say, although I could be wrong. But anyways, and in that you played as both him and Kazuma. And it was sort of also like the backstory between both of those guys and how they got started and stuff. So it was a prequel to Yakuza 1. So, anyways, in this, you're playing as Goro Majima, and the other big difference is this is no longer a turn based RPG. So, this is actually back to the beat 'em up style that the previous games were known for. But it retains the same map that the previous game did. So, it's the same map as like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, but instead of turn based fights, these are now the standard beat 'em up fights. Uh, but even the fighting, they've actually changed it. So Goro Majima has always been a bit more of a fast-paced character compared to Kazuma, and that really comes through here. So he has two fight styles. One's called the Mad Dog, I believe, and the other one is like a pirate style. So if you switch to it, you'll see that he becomes like a pirate, dressed as a pirate, and he's got weapons he can use, so like dual cutlasses, a pistol. His I
Well, so these are when you're invading like the enemy ship.
No, no,
Like
no.
these
This
are
is just
act.
like standard
mhm.
fights you get into across
Okay.
town. So you'll
Okay.
be walking around the map, and then you'll see a group of enemies on your either like on your screen, and you just approach them, and the fight starts, and then you just start beating the crap out of them. And the fighting is a lot more fast paced this time around. There's things that weren't in previous games, like air combos and things like that. So it's a lot more Devil May Cry ish, and it's probably for the better.
Okay.
But then going back to the ship, yes, you can also at any point sort of relinquish control of your ship. So you just let it do whatever, and then you can go and revive your crew. And then eventually, when you damage enemy ship enough, you go and you board their ship. And, essentially kill their captain to then win the fight. But overall, from what I've played, I'm really it's a relatively short demo, but it's enough that I think it confirms that I do want to buy this because first off, Hawaii looks phenomenal. Like that map from Infinite Wealth, it's just such a joy to run around that map. It's always just so sunny and beautiful, and there's an entire mechanic revolving around just saying hi to people and trying to make the most amount of friends by doing that on like this little in-game social
What
media
is this
platform.
game? You're telling me all
I
these
know,
things, and like
exactly.
the
I
name
know.
of it
don't.
is
Like it's hard to describe what a
I'm
Yakuza
so
game is because
confused.
at its core, these games are basically dramas, right? It is
right.
a gangster drama full on, and there's a lot of emotion, and there's parts that are extremely serious, and it's all about like the family and whatever. Granted, in this game, it's a bit of a different story because you're playing Majima, who's been around since Yakuza 1, like I said, but in this game, he's essentially the game starts with him washing up on some island and he's lost his memory. So that story goes wherever it's bound to go.
Okay.
But so there's that one aspect to it where it's the serious side of things. Like in the previous game, Infinite Wealth, you're playing Kasuga and he's on his quest to essentially go and find his mother because he's an orphan from birth, and now they found out that she's in Hawaii, and then that leads to a whole other set of different circumstances involving different fucking mafia people that are after her and whatever, right? So there's like that whole aspect to it, but then there's all the side shit that you can do. And I don't know what is going to be included in this, but just to give you an idea of what was in Infinite Wealth, there was an entire mini game that was basically Animal Crossing. And I think I must
Right.
have
Remember
spent like a
you?
good like 15 to 20 hours just playing that. And then there's a whole thing based on Pokemon. So all the enemies you fight in the game, they're available as these kinds of like creatures, and they each have their own affinity, whether it's like electric or fire or whatever. And then you have to train them up, and you put them in battles, and you make them fight, and you become like the champion of whatever leagues. And then there's like the Pokemon Snap thing where you're literally going around town on a
Taking
bus
pictures.
with a camera and you're taking pictures. But this is essentially muscly men in thongs that sort of come out of the bushes and they'll like strike a pose and you have to get the best shot. And and then there's like a crazy taxi thing where you're picking up people and you're dropping them off. And then there's like another thing where you're essentially riding a bike around town, and it's almost like a Pac-Man kind of mini game, but you're picking up cans to then trade in for money to buy other items off of like the hobo
You're
merchant.
describing me a game. If I had to take what I think a fever dream is and put into a video game format, this
Dude,
game.
and that's all just side activity. The side
Right.
quests are where it's at because these side quests range from something insane like you're you uncover that the head of this mob family that's been terrorizing people is essentially into like a baby fetish. And so you find him and his crew, and they're at a massage parlor, but they're all wearing diapers and they're being changed and acting like babies because that's like their thing and they like it. And then you befriend them, and then he becomes a summon. So when you're in battle and you need help, you literally whip out your cell phone and you summon him, and he just fucking falls out of the sky, and he just goes wah wah, and it's like a 60-year-old man in a diaper on the floor, and that crying like debilitates your fucking
I think
enemies.
I think
And
I'm realizing
then
why Taz likes to play these
I
games.
was
He's
gonna
like
say,
just
and
expressing
no, I
weird
was
No,
gonna
but
say,
hold
feelings.
on. But then
and
the
then he woke
previous,
up, Manny. He woke
but
up.
then and then there was even another side quest in the previous game where you're literally
Ay, ay,
helping
ay.
a crab get a girlfriend. Like there's a crab, and there's another female crab or whatever they might be called if it's something else, and he's clearly this crab somehow likes her, and you're like giving it advice and you're trying to help it just get with her.
Crabs need love too.
But then there's the complete other spectrum of side quests where you're helping this old man to essentially find like a snow machine so that he can, for one last time, show his dying wife snow before she passes away because she's sick. You know,
Do you
like
understand what Yakuza is now, Manny?
this game, like
No,
these
not at
games
all.
are. It's the most video game ass video game you will ever
right.
play, and I love this fucking
Balls
series
to
to
the
death.
wall. Yeah,
Everything. This game is
yeah.
everything. That's all it is. It's a fucking. It is just a. It's an everything salad.
All right. Well, we're gonna switch gears to our first topic, and guys, Warner Brothers isn't just struggling. It seems that they're in full blown crisis mode. I want to restart that.
Nope.
Can I
No, no,
restart
no.
that?
That's it. We'll do it live. It's it. This is
full
it.
full blown. Okay, no,
Full
but
blown
so
The
crisis
full
mode.
bros.
So the crazy thing is that the head of WB Games, I believe his name is David Haddad, or he walked away in January of 2025, and in the past year alone, Warner Brothers lost $300 million. So I believe 200 million was written off for Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and then 100 million more was lost on Harry Potter Quidditch Champions and Multiverses.
Right.
Side
And
note, funny thing about
yes,
Quidditch Champions, I'd gotten into some like alpha play tests. Uh, I literally played it for 20 minutes. And I was like, this game's gonna suck.
yeah, but like that's the crazy thing is it's like when you have IPs such as like Suicide Squad and like everything from the DC universe and even Harry Potter, these games they should be surefire hits, but it feels like Warner Brother Games has been running around with no clear vision and no sense of what their audience actually wants. Because if you if we just talk a little bit about Suicide Squad, right? Like they can write like a thesis on this, like a case study on like what failure is, because Rocksteady is known for their single player Batman games, right? Like we've all played the Arkham games, we've all had a great time with them. I really feel like if it wasn't for the Arkham games, we wouldn't even have gotten a Spider-Man game, made by Sony, right? So I feel like Arkham really opened the door for story driven superhero games, not a multiplayer looter shooter with like a battle pass and time gated content and just like just no clear vision. And I played a little bit of Suicide Squad. I can see, I guess the only redeeming thing about the game is the interaction between the characters, because that actually is fun. But the story
Hmm.
itself, not that great. Like killing off the Justice League might sound cool on paper, but I didn't think that it was awesome. And
Gotham Knights wasn't by Rocksteady, right?
Gotham Knights was by Warner
That
Brothers
was
Montreal.
yeah.
Okay.
And even Gotham Knights, which was crazy because when I was reading the article that was released by Bloomberg, they talked about how the game director wanted a Batman live service game. So before Gotham Knights became a thing, they wanted to make a live service Batman game, and then they got Gotham Knight. And then even after like the reception of Gotham Knight, they wanted to make like a Gotham Knight 1.5 to like sort of correct the mistakes that they made. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Right?
It's
Like
not
it's
the first time though.
it's
Do you guys remember? This is I think back in like the PS3 era.
hmm,
Gotham City Imposters.
Oh my
yes.
god, yes.
Yeah, that was trash. But it's like the thing is like I'm not a marketing person. Like I don't know any of these things, but it's like whenever you think of these products, right? Like these games that you want to release. There's something called market research that's done, and to me, like it's just again like I don't know what they were doing. I don't think they had any idea of where they wanted to go. And then in the article, and this is Taz's. I know that Taz was super looking forward to this Wonder Woman game that was coming out by Warner Brothers, but
Oh
the
man,
fact
it's
that
good to have affordable titles too. I don't want to be paying $92 for everything these days.
What are you trying to imply? Why
oh,
wouldn't it be
that's
affordable?
strike one right there. But all that to say is like I remember the article talked about how the project was rebooted in early 2024, so they changed like directors as well, like, and the fact that the game has already cost $100 million and we don't have a release date, um there's just nothing going on. Like at this point, do you guys even believe that this game is going to one day come out, or is Warner Brothers just like hemorrhaging money on projects that aren't even close to being finished? So if we talk
I
about Wonder
do.
Woman, do you
Yeah.
think that game is going to see the light of day?
I think it will. I just think that right now they're maybe also waiting to see what happens with James Gunn's DC universe. So if
Oof.
he's gonna come out with another Wonder Woman, because this guy, so far he can do no wrong, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen the trailer for Superman. It looks really good.
Yeah, Creature Commandos was good too.
Creature Commandos. That show is incredible. So
Really
everything
good.
this guy touches really just seems to turn into gold. And so if he's going to be in charge of this DC universe, and then he's gonna sort of be heading the next, not heading, but he's in charge of the vision for the next Wonder Woman. That could inform what this game becomes, or at least when this game comes out. Because then, what's better for this game than to be tied? into the release of the movie. Now, maybe not directly to the movie, but if that movie gets people excited about Wonder Woman again, then that timing is perfect. Because
It kind of also
Yeah.
makes sense because if you consider like Suicide Squad, which it kind of drew influence from the new Suicide Squad movie that came out, wasn't it didn't do overall great in the box office. People,
Yeah.
it was kind of lackluster, and then there wasn't that kind of hype that translated well to the video game. And so, even with Wonder Woman, the last Wonder Woman movie that came out was '84. That had its own issues with the box office, and then there was also a Flash game that they were working,
Yeah.
but that got canned, especially after the horrible final product we got with the Flash movie, Flashpoint. So it's not looking great. Yeah,
It's
hopefully James Gunn is able to turn it around because they're
and
good
yeah.
IPs.
They are, and the thing is, like, I like. Oh, look, on the surface, their new strategy makes sense, right? We're gonna make less games, and we're gonna have more focus on these games. So
Yes,
I believe the CEO David Zaslav said that they really wanted to focus on four franchises, right? So they wanted to focus on Mortal Kombat. They wanted to focus on Batman. I believe there was also a focus on Game of Thrones and Harry Potter, right? So to me, like on the surface, that sounds like a smart idea because you're prioritizing, quality over quantity, right? So gone are the days where you're just kind of pumping out all of these projects, spreading your teams, very thin as well, and just ending up making like half baked, overpriced failures. So if they really focus on those four franchises, I think that best case scenario, we get quality games, we get a proper Batman game, we get a like a proper Mortal Kombat game. And honestly, one series, I don't know if you guys even thought about this, Middle Earth, like the Shadow of Mordor games. Like I would love to see a new Shadow of Mordor games because like I played both of them. They were so much fun, and that was like Warner Brothers at its peak. Like they were
right.
releasing the Arkham games, they were releasing Shadow of Mordor. Like Warner Brothers games, like they could do no wrong. And all of a sudden, right now, it's like they're kind of in this crisis management mode.
There's so much that they have that they're
Mhm.
just letting waste away
Yeah,
because they don't know how to go about using it, right? So
right.
Shadow of Mordor, perfect example. That game, incredible. It's rare that I'll go back and finish a game for a second time, and for that specific game, I did because it plays really well. The world is great, but the best thing about it is what's that? What was that system called where the
The
enemies,
Nemesis system.
the
yeah,
Nemesis system, that
so
worked
good.
so well,
Yeah,
and then you just never fucking saw it again.
but and
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 they have
and
that
Wasn't
patented, right? So
yeah,
at
wasn't
this
there a
point,
sequel for Shadow Mordor?
there was, and
there
it was
was.
not nearly as good as the first.
It was still
Okay.
enjoyable, but yes, you're right. And but that's the thing. It's like I don't know about you guys. I don't want Warner Brothers to just make a Hogwarts Legacy 2 and then do nothing else because they're scared to take risks. Like
But that's just it. This is
yeah.
where I'm going with this. Is for some reason to them, a hit game means that they're spending hundreds of millions and pumping
Hmm.
out this like triple A thing. You guys have so many properties. Why can I not get a fucking 2D Looney Tunes game?
Yeah.
Why? Why? And why do you think you have to develop them all in house? Anyways, you guys have 1,000 different IPs. I mean, look at everything that was inside of multiverses.
Hmm.
License
Hmm.
some of that out to some studios. Let them make some good games. Get your overall brand back up to snuff,
I
and then
think
have people thinking of the WB in a positive light again. I mean, look at Ubisoft. The best thing that they've come out with in the last decade, almost at this point, is fucking Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. And is that
Yeah.
some massive AAA game that costs hundreds of millions of dollars? No, right?
No, not at
too
all.
bad we won't
It
see
didn't.
a
Yeah,
sequel potentially because
it
this.
didn't sell that well. But again, did they market the hell out of it like they do all their other games? No. And then what happened? It came out in its first 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It didn't sell what they wanted to. Boom, team disbanded. You're never getting a
Yeah.
sequel to that game,
I,
despite the fact that it was critically received better than anything that they've put
I
One
out
of the
do
things that
before.
you
think that
yeah.
because of the losses they've had over the last year or two, I think they'd be also better off playing it safe just for now. So like Rocksteady working on that Batman game, Monolith working on Wonder Woman, WB Montreal working on like Game of Thrones, and like the which I forgot the name of the studio that's working on Hogwarts Legacy. it's I think they need a W before they
Well,
start investing into other projects, like what everything you guys mentioned.
and that's true. They do need a W, and I think that again, I think it all stems with even the movies. Like, and I know this is a gaming podcast and everything, but even same thing with the movies. James Gunn said it himself. He said everything is riding on Superman. If this movie does not do well, it will affect the future projects that we have on the horizon. And I think it's the same thing with the video games. Because right now, it's like the way that I perceive the company is that this company is a ship with no captain. There's no destination, right? And they like, unless they figure out what kind of games they actually want to make, they're gonna keep on sinking, right? And so, like, Mortal
Well, their
Kombat,
their
I
timing is
yeah,
is is fucked as well. Because really, what are you
yeah,
doing, right? You're looking at you release the Batman games. They all do very well. Now, at that point, live service games are coming out, and you're realizing, wow, these are making a ton of money. At
mm,
that period of time, they're popular and they're making a ton of money. These days, games take how many years to develop? If you're looking at a AAA game, let's say like what, 5 years maybe, right?
Yeah.
By that time, who knows what the gaming like landscape is going to look like? So therefore, you're telling your studio now that has always made these crazy good AAA single player superhero games, which, mind you, before this Batman series even came out, anyone that looked at a licensed IP game, especially superheroes to come out, it was essentially looked at as fucking trash. And that's what
yeah,
it was, right? Spider Man games aside, there were 1,000 different Batman games to come before Arkham Asylum, and Arkham Asylum was the one. Everything else before
hmm
that, people were like, yeah, whatever. At best, it's a 7, you know?
yeah,
And then you tell this studio, oh, well, now live service is popping off. We want you to make a live service game, even though you've never done it. It takes them a while. By the time it comes out, people are fucking tired of live service.
yeah,
And so there's no room in the market for it. And on top of that, the game itself just wasn't that exciting. And it's a Suicide Squad of all things. If you wanted to make a live service game that fucking bad, why couldn't you have it star the Justice League instead of you having to go and kill the Justice League? Like, what makes you think that the Suicide Squad is this hot shit property to begin with? And then the other thing too is they were done making the Batman games, and then you go online and everyone's like, "Yo, Rocksteady needs to make a Superman game. The next game has to be Superman. It has to be Superman." Rumors are that it's Superman. Everyone's excited. Are they going to announce it this year? Is it Superman? Is it Superman? And they make a motherfucking Suicide Squad game. Whereas now James Gunn is coming out with a Superman movie that may essentially skyrocket the fucking Superman brand and Warner altogether in
yeah,
terms of like the cachet that they have. And what does WB have? A fucking $200 flush down the goddamn toilet.
yeah,
It is crazy when you compare it to Marvel and Marvel games. Yes, was
I
it
mean,
Marvel
Avengers
Avengers
sucked
did not do
too,
well.
but
That was a
again,
shit show.
again,
Yes.
oh, let's go and make this live service.
Right.
but
But then
that's
you
the
look
Like
at
biggest
some of the other
problem.
games, Guardians of the Galaxy, Midnight Suns.
Guardians
I don't
was
think
amazing,
yes.
and it was
Those
not
two
live
games
service.
Yeah, exactly.
those two games were reviewed really well. I don't think they sold super well. But then you have games like Spider-Man 2, and then you also have Marvel Rivals now, which is doing tremendous. So, but those are also based off of or heavily
When
inspired by
Marvel
their movies.
Rivals, part of Marvel Rivals is luck in that it's filling a void left over by all the bullshit that Overwatch has pulled and therefore lost that base and they're looking for something else to play. And then
Right.
what better than an Overwatch like that's Marvel?
And
But
everyone's already familiar, and a lot of people do like those characters.
and to their credit, I mean honestly,
Yes.
that game plays very well and then the art
Yes.
is top notch. Like even
Hmm.
just some of the base skins, like
We can
I
all
look at some of these.
appreciate Miss Fantastic. What is it?
Yeah,
Is it
it is. It is
her ass? Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, you look at some of these skins where I'm looking at this and I'm like, yo, that's like 20-25 bucks for a skin. But honestly, if I played this game enough, I can see myself just biting the bullet and doing it just to support them because it is that good.
Hmm. You know what? Look, at the end of the look, I really hope that this year and like the following, that there's like just more of a shift towards single player games. Because if you look at, let's for example, Kingdom Come Deliverance, right? Like that game came out, to me, it kind of came out of nowhere, and it's been, like, I don't know if you guys read the reports, but the game already has made the money that it costs to make the game in like a week or something like that. I think a week or 2 weeks, right?
I think it's already sold 2 million copies, I
Yeah,
think.
Avowed, same thing. Indiana Jones, like, I feel hopefully we're kind of on this trend of like a return of, single player games. And I know that we're gonna have a discussion later on about Nintendo and why Nintendo works, and I think that we can save that for that discussion. But I'm really hoping that this is kind of like the little jolt that they need, where it's like, okay, it's completely fine to make a single player game, right? Like, you finish the game from A to Z, and then and then you never look back. It doesn't have Not everything has to be live service. So
Right, but that's the thing. There
the best
were some
case, yeah,
games that started
yeah,
the live service kind of model. Very few of them actually succeeded. For the most part, a lot of them were trash. And
exactly.
then studios just never stopped. They never understood. And now we're tired because we're getting these shitty AAA games are attempting to be live service. And a lot of people, especially last year, are flocking towards indie games, especially.
Yeah, and like, let's not forget that. I mean, the sad, reality is that sometimes these decisions are made because it's good for the shareholders and not necessarily
Not
for,
sometimes, all the time. These
yeah, all the time.
days,
Yes,
if
yeah,
you're a major studio and if you're a public company, your primary goal is to make that line go up and to the right. That
exactly.
Well,
is
the
that is what
former
you're
head
trying
of
to do.
WB Games, David, he didn't even play games,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
And
doesn't
it's not
make
it look
sense.
it to me. Okay, look, I
And
don't
that, I
think
mean,
that
look,
you
and
necessarily
I think it
need
would
to.
help,
Yeah, exactly. I
but
think it'll
yeah,
help, but it's not. He's a finance guy, and he has like a bigger vision, right, of what he wants the studio to be. He doesn't necessarily need to be someone that like grew up and played video games,
I
right?
mean,
If he
look at
surrounds himself with
Activision.
people, yeah, if he surrounds himself with people that are knowledgeable, I think that you can still have a recipe for success. So
But
I don't think
if
that
you're
you
the
need to
head
be
of
a
the video game
gamer.
division, I think it's more than just looking at the finances, because at that point you're just I feel like that's just appeasing the shareholders.
But that's
You're not looking
literally
at the
what your job
product
is.
itself.
But that's the thing.
Your
That's the
job
job.
is if you're a public company, your job is shareholders. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's what's the best experience. So it's not what's the best experience we can give to players. It's what's the best experience we can give to players that'll make it that we milk every single last fucking penny out of them in the process, right?
But
And
they don't
and which
have
is
to
why you
be
don't have to
different
have that
things.
gaming experience. If you look at Activision before Microsoft bought them out, Bobby Kotick, you think this guy sits there and plays Call of Duty?
Fair
Like
enough.
he's just a rich fat sack of shit, and he knows that he's gonna get his fucking bonus at the end of the day if the new Call of Duty sells well. And so what's he gonna do? Pump everything into Call of Duty. What? Activision made a sick Tony Hawk remake and it was really good, and people want another one. Nope, put them towards the Call of Duty
Manny,
because that's what happened.
are you gonna be bleeping all of the?
No, that's well, yeah. But like, okay, to be fair, Call of Duty is kind of like an outlier. If we look at over the years, we've constantly joked about Call of Duty, how there's one every year or every other year, and it's the same format, but it's never changed, and I don't see it changing anytime soon because people
EA, do you
just
think Andrew Wilson plays video games in his spare time? This guy looks like he's made from an AI. He's not sitting there playing. He's not sitting there playing Dragon Age and making decisions in that game and hoping that, oh man, I really hope I get the romance of this freaking character. No. He's looking at his charts and shit and he's like, okay, what do I gotta do to get this game to sell bonkers?
It's all about surrounding yourself. Yeah, so you need someone that understands finances, but it's like surrounding yourself with these brilliant gaming minds. And I like I said, like, I think that is a recipe for success. So that
But this
way
is why,
shareholders are happy, and so are we.
and this is why, like you said right now, everyone's flocking to the indies because it's
Yeah.
the only one that seems like it's uncorrupted at the moment.
Hmm. Now, did
yes.
you guys wanted to add anything else to this topic, or are we good? I feel like Warner
Make smaller
Brothers.
games. There's nothing wrong with smaller games.
Look,
Stop
best case
stop
They
thinking
scenario.
stop thinking that hundreds of millions of dollars pumped
Yeah.
in and AAA equates to success because it clearly does not. And I hope that Concord especially gives everyone a wake up call. With that said, make smaller games. It's
Yeah.
okay. Make another Lost Crown. Give me
Hmm.
a Castlevania like with freaking Scooby Doo for all I care. Like just make good games. You guys have a ton of IPs that people love. It's not just
And
Game of
not
Thrones and
yeah,
Harry
you're right.
Potter. You guys lucked out with Harry Potter. That's what it was. You had a studio that knew what it was doing. It
Hmm.
had a focused vision and they executed on it. And then what else did you do on top of that? You all got fucking greedy because you could have included Quidditch as part of a mini game or something in that. And that could have even helped it sell more because people do love Quidditch. But what did you do? Hey guys, look at Rocket League. Let's make a Rocket League with Quidditch. And guess what? It sucks. And now it's a big loss. $100 million down the
Yeah,
drain.
down the drain. Yeah. but again, like I'm hoping that it's the best case scenario where they'll actually refocus on quality and they'll give us proper games. So I don't think that
That's
we're gonna see any
Give me a
new
Mortal
game.
Kombat beat 'em up. Give me Streets of Rage with fucking Johnny Cage.
Dude,
Do we
Shaolin
want
monks.
Shaolin Monks again? And
Yes,
what was
Yeah.
that Sub Zero and Scorpion one as well?
dude. They're.
Yes.
I know we're gonna talk about the state of play, but they're remastering fucking Days Gone. Okay, that
That
game,
that to me does not make sense why it's being remastered.
it is like certified somewhere and stamped that no one gives a shit about that game anymore. But for some reason, I can't get a remake of Shaolin Monks.
Who is
Yeah.
asking for the remake of Days Gone? I just
Nobody,
So
not
so
a
while
soul.
so while we're on that topic,
If that
man.
state of play was in front of a crowd, you would have heard crickets when that trailer played,
Yeah, well that's the thing because we got a 40-minute showcase
and you
that
would have heard crickets because those crickets would have been booing.
so in this 40-minute showcase, we had a variety of titles for the PS5, but also the PSVR 2. I must say, the VR titles that they did show, I'm intrigued, and because they have made good VR games, so let's kind of give them there. Some sequels were absent, so for example, the Ghost of Tsushima sequel, which is called Ghosts of Vyote. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm saying that wrong, but that was kind of missing out. And while there were new IPs that were shown, because we all like new IPs, right? Like we all like some original things. I don't think the gaming community came out buzzing after this state of play. I
there
think a
was
lot of
no
people were
Kingdom Hearts
snoozing.
4. There was nothing about Kingdom Hearts missing Link. That
Well,
was supposed to come out last year.
it's because Taz and I, before we even talked about this, it's like Sony is like, well, we've already won. Like Microsoft's like, well, we've lost, right? Like so Sony is kind of
I
like
don't think this
coasting.
is them. Look, I'll make fun of them for this, but I'm not saying that they're just resting on their laurels, right? 'Cause in
No.
the end, they
Mm,
still got to sell more consoles, and they got to make that line go up and to the right, like I said. So that still stands. So they're still going to be trying their darndest. But if you're posting that you have a state of play,
hmm
and I'm not getting updates on Ghost of Yote, I'm not getting updates on Wolverine, and you're giving me a CG trailer for the next Housemark game, which look, Housemark, fantastic studio, Returnal. I love Resogun, one of my favorite games. But no one's like Returnal is not something that everyone to this day talks about and is like, oh man, yeah, that's a great game that I'm still playing. It just sort of it came out, it's great, it came and went. They are established that they're fantastic, cool, but
hmm
this is not what's gonna get the needle moving for
No.
in terms of
And none of
in
the
terms of
games that
Sony.
they really talked about were first party.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Besides Saros that might come out on PC as well after a year, they also showed the Tides of Annihilation, which looks interesting, right? Like it's built on Unreal Engine 5. It might be Sony's answer to like From style, action games, but it's also coming out on the Series X and it's
Yeah.
also coming out on PC. So it's not like it's an original, Sony game. And then they also showed the Shinobi, which, like it's cool, but
I didn't know anything about Shinobi up until they showed this.
Dude, shout out to Sega. I have to say,
Yeah.
shout out to
yeah,
Sega for doing things like this. You're coming out with Shinobi. They made another Streets of Rage.
yeah.
They're coming out with another Crazy Taxi. They're doing something else with Jet Grind, as far as I'm aware. They're bringing back all these cool old IPs that people hold dearly. And
Hmm.
with the track record that they've had in the last few years, I think they're going to execute on all of them. So, WB, take notes.
Yeah,
Also,
no,
Sonic
exactly.
Racing Crossworlds
Yes. So
that came out of nowhere.
I remember
Pleasantly
when we used
surprised.
to play that game like over 10 years ago, like
Sonic Team
the
Racing, yeah.
Sonic Team Racing. And when I saw the trailer for it with the portals and everything, like I thought that looked really fun. And that could be something that once it goes on sale, we could all pick up and, play like the old days.
Sonic
Um,
is really hot right now, man. I mean, with the
yeah,
movie especially, and kids these days are crazy about it. So
yeah. And then there's Lost Soul Aside, that
That
could be a
game,
dark horse.
I don't know what that game tried to be because it looked like Final Fantasy
Yeah,
15. Is that the
well,
one with Noctis? It looked like that, but then something. Okay,
see,
I'm not sure if you guys feel about
exactly what
this.
you're saying right now is just that I looked at this trailer and I was like, what's the hook?
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and
What am I
there's
getting
something
excited
that these
over?
games, new games, are doing, like these particle effects for their special abilities, and it's there's so much of it, and I can't get a sense of what I'm seeing. and I'm more confused than I'm intrigued about the game.
It's a mishmash of like just
Exactly.
different things. Like it's like, oh well, I've already seen this. Like I've already seen this in this game. I've already seen that in that game. It's like a new IP, but at the same time, none of the ideas are new, right? It's
But
all
that's
kind of
that's
just
kind of
taken
how I
from.
felt with most of the state of play.
Okay, yeah, that's
We
fair.
didn't really get a big enough deep dive on a lot of the games that they were showing. It's just one after another, but none of them were, for except for a few outliers, they weren't really interesting enough, and most of them are things we've never heard of, probably.
Mhm.
And so there was nothing compelling us to want to learn more. There was like volume, like I don't know how to say this. There were a lot of titles, but no substance to most of them.
I think it.
It's like I opened my fridge and I just looked at it, and then it's like I just closed it. There's nothing. There's nothing that made me want to eat something or grab something.
Kind of. You're like, oh man, like I thought I had pizza, but it's just like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
pita. Like I don't know, man. I turned it on and I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, maybe the next thing, right? Maybe the next thing, and eventually I'm like, dude,
Mm.
it's been 20 minutes, and I could not care less about anything that I've seen so far. Like aside, say like Shinobi, which looks pretty fun, but overall it ends, and my flabber remains thoroughly ungasted. Like it's just fucking. I'm just
There was like the games I was excited for. They were already announced ahead of time. Monster Hunter Wilds,
Mhm.
for
yeah.
instance,
Like don't show
and
me
then
all these trailers and shit for games that we already know are coming or
yeah,
that
split
are coming
split
soon.
fiction and
Yeah, yeah,
Borderlands.
100%.
It's nice that we're getting a state of play for Borderlands. It's nice that we
Borderlands.
have a release date for game for split fiction. We know the DLC coming up for Monster Hunter, but
Borderlands.
Did anyone watch
Yeah.
that trailer and think to themselves, "Oh man, I'm excited for Borderlands 4?"
No, but that's the thing. But it's like I really hope that it's more like 2 and less like 3.
so that's what I like so far from what we've seen,
Yeah,
is that
because
it's
it's
just going
all
back to the mayhem, the action, the guns, and
exactly
like the thing that sucked the most about three, especially coming after two, was like the story and the characters and the villains you just did not give a shit about.
0.
And so
I don't know,
I'm
man. I
curious to
mean,
see how the
yes,
state of play this spring is going to be like for it.
but I looked at 4 and I'm watching the trailer and I'm like, "Yep, that's Borderlands."
Yeah,
Like
but
it's
that's yeah.
just I don't know. But anyways, that's it. This it's
So
a
The Digimon game,
that came out of
I'm
nowhere.
that came out of nowhere, and I wanted to play Cyber Sleuth. I think that was the previous one, and I was I was like, not presently, I was like hyped throughout the entire thing up until I saw the costume of the main characters where they looked like fucking Speed Racer from the old manga anime, and I was like, I just couldn't take it seriously anymore.
I don't know. I mean, like, look, it seems
I'm
that
always surprised Digimon has a following.
but that's the thing. But I was gonna say like
Oh,
the fans have been waiting for this. I believe it's like their first mainline game in like over like 8 or 10 years or something like that.
it
It's
wasn't
coming
that
out on.
long ago the Cyber Sleuth came out.
Well, I mean, like
Cyber
a
Sleuth came
mainline.
out 2015. Oh shit. Okay.
So there
So
you go. Yeah.
yep.
So yeah,
Yeah.
like, 10
God,
years.
2015 was 10 years ago.
Okay, so we saw. Okay, so I think we all agree. I mean, again, I think for me that VR game with the claymation, uh, looked interesting. So it's kind of like a
Yes.
horror, fantasy with like actual,
It was like a
claymation.
cross between like
Yeah,
Coraline and like a Tim
yeah, it
Burton
looked it
movie, and
looked
it looked
great.
really
Yeah,
interesting.
they're still pushing for their VR games, and if you look at last year's VR releases, they were pretty good. So there was still a focus on that, and I think that they'll be able to like deliver on that for sure. So but overall, like I thought that it was a swing and a miss, and
What do you guys think of Directive 8020, the Supermassive game,
yeah. So the thing is, so those are from the same people that made the Until Dawn and
and
the
then
Dark Anthology.
Quarry
Yeah, so the Dark
and Dark
Anthology
Anthology
games.
series? Yeah.
So Until Dawn, I love that game. Like I played it twice, and I really enjoyed like the fact that it actually is a game that is replayable, right? So Until Dawn was great. The Query was not as great, but I still enjoyed it. But after that, there's a bunch of games that came out in this Dark Anthology series, and they were not great games. So when I look at the track record of the last like 2 or 3 games that came out, it doesn't really instill much confidence. But when I was looking at the trailer, it did remind me a lot of Until Dawn and the Query. So I'm hoping that they were like, okay, like we need a reset clearly because the last 2 or 3 games that we released haven't been up to par. So let's kind of go back to what made us successful, which was great characters, story driven horror. And yeah, so I'm cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, like I said, I don't think I'm gonna get an Until Dawn, but we'll see.
Well, you are
Oh,
getting an Until Dawn movie.
Which looks great, by the way. It's
does it look
nothing.
great?
It looks amazing. Honestly, like I saw the trailer for
Okay.
it, I was like just greatly surprised. Um, but you know, besides that, there was another Sony swing and a miss that happened, which was the PSN outage. And
So we're gonna quickly, just before we talk about that, we're
sure,
gonna
sure.
do. It's a new segment of the podcast. It's basically a lightning round. So we're gonna be discussing a bunch of topics that we don't feel like there's a lot of substance to it, but we do want to mention it. Maybe have a comment to it. So one of them for the lightning round is Sony's outage that they had. Sorry to interrupt, Jazz. You can go ahead if
hmm
you continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was gonna say that, yeah. So the PlayStation Network was down for over 24 hours, and I believe that lasted, yeah, from Friday to Saturday. So
Mm-hmm.
multiplayer was dead. The PlayStation Store was down. You couldn't even go and like manage your account and like look at your trophies and whatnot. And it came back after 24 hours, and to my surprise, Sony's response was that they gave 5 free days of PlayStation Plus, which to be honest, to me, that's 5 more days than I ever expected them to give. And I know that there's a backlash because there's also like non PS Plus players that got nothing. So right,
Right,
like an
because
example,
what's
yeah,
frustrating is like a lot of games like Fortnite run off of PS servers,
yes,
and so it's it's another one of those situations where companies kind of force games to run off their servers, and there's also reasons why we can often have crossplay between certain games.
always surprised. Like, I mean, to me, like this is classic Sony. It's like they do the bare minimum to apologize, and people just accept it. So has like have they shown us anything from like the past that would make us even think like, oh yeah, Sony's gonna make they're gonna make up to like their promise, and they're gonna make good. And no, like the fact that they gave 5 free days of PlayStation Plus, I was surprised to begin with. And their response were like, I mean, they didn't really explain what happened, how it happened, why it happened. It was just more like, oh yeah, well, we're very sorry, and
Yeah, they were
here's
kind of
five
like
days of
radio silent for most of the outage. But
yeah.
then again, it's like considering the success of PS5 and the PS4, it's like who's really gonna complain long term about it because they're just gonna. It's not like it's gonna stop players from still gaming on the PS5.
Mhm.
It
I don't
doesn't.
know,
It
man.
doesn't deter anyone from it. It doesn't leave a bad taste in our mouth, 100%. But
I
Sony's on the
mean,
top,
look,
and they know it.
the service was down. People couldn't play games for one day. Like, guys, just shut up, man. Fucking move. You know what I
Thank
mean?
you, thank you.
Like, okay, yeah, it sucks. Don't get me wrong, but y'all are acting as if they should be giving you like a year of PSN for free when,
No.
like, fucking 364 days out of the year works fine, and then that one day everyone decides to suddenly lose their shit. But I think the bigger issue in all this is if you look at it from a game preservation point of view. Because now, if I have a library of games that I've downloaded digitally that need to authenticate off of their servers before it lets me play, and I can't play because the servers are down, then that's a bigger point of contention to me than like,
Mhm.
oh, I can't go and play Call of Duty online because the
Right.
PSN is down.
But
You know,
that just goes back to the whole conversation about a different
but
conversation
that's a
about
whole
physical
different thing
versus digital.
altogether. So
Yeah.
that's why, and to me, this is just whatever, man. It's technology. Shit happens. My Wi-Fi went down the other week. I'm not gonna call my provider and be like, "Yo, give me a free month's worth of shit." You know what I mean? Like, it's
Some
just
people do.
people have to accept that sometimes this shit just happens. There's nothing
Mhm.
Yeah.
more to it. Even back in the days of physical media, you couldn't play a game. Why? Because it was scratched up. You go back to the NES, you couldn't play a game. Why? Because you didn't blow into it 20 times before you popped it into the fucking cartridge bay. Like, just take it easy, man. Go fucking outside, breathe,
Touch grass
take
or
some,
Touch
snow.
grass. Yeah.
take in some fresh air. Maybe come
And we
over to
can't
my
even touch
place and
grass here
shovel
because there's
shovel
so
my
much fucking
driveway.
snow. So much fucking snow.
uh,
This is just
Um,
like a non-story to me. Like, it's just okay. Yeah, it
100%.
happened.
it's a
Cool.
quick mention. That's why it's not a lightning
It's
round.
not as bad as back in the early 2000s when PSN was down for like a month or something like that.
Mhm.
Because like someone hit the delete button and deleted PSN. Like, I don't know what happened back then, but
Um,
yeah.
y'all kids need to calm down with your fucking TikTok ass attention spans.
and then All
Ay,
right.
ay, ay. All right.
Showing my age
Um,
here.
another quick topic another quick topic we should mention is the Switch 2 patent confirms that the controls are going to
Yes.
have a mouse functionality built into it. Whether or not they do
You
utilize
know,
that remains to be seen.
that will be a game changer to like the dozens of people that are going to play RTS games on the Switch. but, but again, joking aside,
Okay, we laugh about it, but then things like
Civilization, games
sure,
like Civilization, because they do have a Civ on the Switch. So
right,
if they
but
were to release the new one, why not? You have
right,
it.
but then okay, but like Nintendo does things in its own way usually, and then like
Hmm.
if you look at games like Splatoon that uses motion controllers, motion functionalities with your with a like a third person shooter, and it just worked so well for that game. So for them to introduce mouse features on the controller, sure, let's see where
Mario
that
Paint.
goes.
Give me another Mario Paint.
Oh
Mario
yeah.
Paint, sure. If your Switch is going to have a built-in browser,
I
sure.
mean,
Why
look,
the
this
fuck?
is Nintendo. They
Yeah.
might use this, and there's some potential to it that we're not seeing, or
Hmm.
maybe it's just another. What was that called on the original Switch? 3D vibration or 3D haptics or whatever.
Right.
You know, guess how many ice cubes are vibrating in your Switch remote? I'm
What
sure
even the 3D feature
so
on the
many
3DS?
games made use of that. Exactly, 3D on the 3DS. Eventually, they just abandoned it altogether, and they was like, guys, look, it's called the 3DS, but just DS all the games. Like it's just whatever. They're trying it. It's
Yeah.
patented. They haven't even said anything. It's not even officially, been revealed. This is all just
Yeah.
sort of through documentation found online because Nintendo
Yeah.
still
I
hasn't
mean, the
had their
patent
direct.
isn't an exact confirmation of the tech, but the reveal trailer, if you look back, kind of alluded to it when we
Yeah,
see
like a
like the
little
controller be
mouse. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly when they snap on the strap and it's like moving along.
but dude, I
So
mean, for certain applications, I'm sure it could be great.
yeah.
But I'm not gonna be going and playing Call of Duty on that using that as a mouse either.
No, no one's
Because
gonna
I
look
think
at
it's
that and be
got
like, it has the mouse functionality, and now I have to buy the Switch too. If I wasn't
no. But what
convinced
I'm saying
before.
is, people thinking that maybe the mouse is good enough to like play an FPS with. I doubt it. Now, for something like Civ, for something like Mario Paint, other things it might be able to use that in some functionality that we're not
Hmm.
clairvoyantly seeing right now. Sure. So either way, it's Nintendo. They always seem to come up with some stuff that at least they try this stuff. You know,
Hmm.
look at Labo. Like who even talks about Labo anymore? But you know what? They
Manny
came
bought
out with
it.
it. They came out with
I
what
never
they
bought
did.
Labo.
Okay,
No,
Oh
I
no, you
never did. It
didn't.
was
yeah.
a Ring
Okay.
Fit, and you guys had a good laugh about that.
Oh yeah,
Ring
yeah,
dude,
yeah.
Ring Fit. I 100% stand by Ring Fit. That game is great. That
It's a
accessory is
workout.
fantastic.
Yeah, it
It is a
was.
it
Yeah.
is a proper ass workout.
Yeah.
So since we're
So
already talking about Nintendo, we can move to our discussion question of the
Yeah.
week, which is, um, what do we think that Nintendo is doing so right that other developers slash publishers are getting so wrong? Because like if we look at AAA titles for Nintendo and we look at games like Mario Kart, for instance, they do. It's not just like a one-off where they do well on release. They historically game their first-party games especially do well over the entire span of the console.
You know, so that's a really good question. Like I don't know who thought about this question, but
I think
kudos
it
to
was
the that was
Taz.
Taz.
Yeah.
Really, really good question because it really did make me think. Like, Nintendo, they don't overspend, right? Like we talked about, Warner Brothers burning through hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Like if you want to have like a full circle, moment, they release games that are polished and on a reasonable budget, right? Okay, so that's not the issue. Manny talked about the long lifespan, right? Like what is it, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which has been in the top 10 since its release, and it's like how long has it been since it came out, right? And it's crazy that it's kind of been this
and that game
sustainable.
is a port. That's a Wii U game.
But that's the thing,
Yeah.
but to me, when I started asking myself the question, like, what is their secret sauce? Like, what's their recipe, right? Like, how is it that they're so successful? To me, timeless gameplay, strong franchises, and they don't chase trends.
But that's the
Nintendo
thing.
will
So,
never ever chase trends. Like they'll never want to make a game that like requires like a ridiculous budget, has like hyper realistic graphics or anything like that. Like they really really go for timeless gameplay.
but
And they
especially like
do.
following a conversation with WB, it's like they look at how they can innovate the next game that's going to come out for like any genre, and they don't care about chasing trends. They don't want to make a live service game. They don't want to make a game with a battle pass. So like, what are people going to enjoy? What what are they proud to make? And they usually hit the nail.
And
To
the
be
other
honest,
thing that
they
I
don't
really
miss.
like that you mentioned, Manny, is the thing is that they have a loyal fan base. But the thing is that like with a loyal fan base, what's up?
Me, yeah,
Yeah, but that's the thing. So
yeah.
a loyal fan base that is not insulted though. Like you know that when the like a new Legend of Zelda game comes out, right? Like you know that it's going to be quality, right? Like you know that they're going to like stay true but also innovate and introduce like new gameplay, mechanics, right? That's going to be satisfying to you, right? Animal Crossing came out during the pandemic. It was like the perfect storm, right? Everything worked out great. But they have a loyal fan base, but they don't insult that fan base, right? Like they know what the fan base wants, and then they just kind of deliver time and time again. And Taz talked about Mario Kart 8 being a like a Wii U game, sure, but again, like I just find that even with Mario Kart, they still release like new tracks, right? Like I believe they had like what two separate DLCs for that game for Mario Kart, right? So like they still kind of like added new content to the. So to me, it's innovation over imitation and just strong first party titles that I don't think that I still believe that it's unmatched, right? When you have
But also,
Mario, Legend of Zelda, Animal
yeah.
Crossing, like Metroid now, right? It's
But
unmatched.
also, like as a company, they have a good standing with their community. Yes, I'm not blindsided by Nintendo's like great games. They have their issues as well, more often than not, with like especially with ROMs and emulators and all that stuff, which is a different
Yeah.
discussion. But like if you look back at like when the Wii U came out, it was a commercial failure, by far one of their worst products ever released. But then instead of just laying off their employees, it's like the CEO at the time, Iwata, he had taken like a pay cut of 50% just to keep their workers afloat, to make sure like they could want to continue working for Nintendo. That kind of like fosters a very healthy work environment, and like that kind of shows to the products that they release.
I think another big thing with Nintendo is, I mean, look, first off, it's like Jess said, the franchises are strong and they're legacy franchises. They date
Hmm.
Right.
back to the days of, the NES, right? So people have grown up with these. There's an allegiance to it, there's a nostalgia factor to it. People identify with it. So that's one big thing. The second, when they release these first party titles, they are content complete titles that work, don't need some day one patch, aren't
Hmm.
riddled with microtransactions. You're getting just a full on game to play that is complete, nothing missing. It is a full experience and it is impeccably made. It respects the player. It's
Right.
not
Hmm.
they don't make games. Yes, obviously profit is part of their thing. It's a business, that's a given. But Nintendo, whether the intent is this or not, it's as if they're making games that are for the best possible player experience.
Yes.
You look at something like Zelda, people are still playing Breath of the Wild despite the fact that a sequel to that came out that is easily as good, if not better. You look at Mario Kart,
I'm still playing old, like sure, I have a bias towards Legend of Zelda, but I'm still playing older Zelda titles,
well,
and I'm
that's it.
still enjoying them. Sometimes even more than new releases from
Hmm.
other companies.
You look at Mario Kart, that game had a ton of tracks, a ton of racers, a ton of features, a ton of little accessories that you can use for all your racers. And not every menu was riddled with different kinds of currencies and microtransactions and
Hmm.
all of that. And yeah, they released DLC for it down the line, but I think it's only natural that they went ahead and released the DLC, considering that if I make a racing game and that thing comes out and like 5 years after the fact, that game is constantly in the top 10, not just of Nintendo games, but overall games that
Hmm.
keep selling. Obviously, I'll make DLC for it, not just because it's an opportunity to make some extra money, sure, but they're releasing like quality stuff, and the people and there's a demand for it. People actually
Yeah,
want this.
they could have cheaped out and just like taken the easy route out, where they could have just taken older maps and left it at that. But the fact that it was maps from their new mobile game, older games, but then also adding new maps that were never seen before, That's quality
And the
content
other
right there.
thing, and I think this is probably one of the biggest things, they do not drop their prices.
They
They
don't.
don't. You
Yeah.
know, you look at Breath of the Wild, it's the same price you're gonna pay for that than you pay for Tears of the Kingdom, that you pay for Mario Kart, that you pay for Mario Odyssey, that you pay for Mario Wonder, that you pay for fucking Donkey Kong. Like their games, there's specific moments in the year where there might be a slight price drop, but you're not gonna see anything nearly like a 50% or this or that. You know what I mean? It's just you're getting maybe what 10, 20, tops 30% if you're lucky off that
Yeah.
title for a limited time in the year. But aside from that, you're paying full price, and people are happy to pay full price because they're
Yeah.
getting a full experience out of the game.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because like so many times, even I think when we were talking about Elden Ring, Night Rain, it's like Jazz mentions like, yeah, maybe if it goes down on sale, we can all pick it up and
Well,
play.
that's
But it's like
exactly it.
we
I look at
never
it.
think about that for Nintendo games.
We
I want to
don't.
play. I've wanted to play Assassin's Creed Mirage for pretty much since release. I haven't even touched it. It's gone on sale multiple times. I've seen it on sale for like $30. I'm like, nah, whatever. It'll drop lower. I'll get it when it's like $10. And I say that for every game. Sony games come out. First party, God of War Ragnarok comes out. Do I want to pay $80 for it day one when I know it's going to drop to 40 like a couple of months later, or eventually, hit PSN like it just did? Now it's on PS Plus and I can play it as part of that service. It's just you look at that and it kind of, I'm not saying it cheapens your franchise because I don't want to say that the fact that a game goes on sale makes it that it's overall worth less in the eyes of a player. But Nintendo is like Apple in that regard. They're
But that's the
never going to
thing.
drop their prices. They know what their product is worth, and they're adamant that this is what it's worth and this is what we're going to sell it for, whether you guys like it or not.
I was gonna say
Right.
the same thing about Nintendo being like Apple because, and again, I talked about market research when we mentioned like Warner Brothers are not doing well with Nintendo. They understand long term value, right? So they have a vision, and they're like, our games are gonna be this price, okay, and you're gonna like it no matter what. But the other thing that I was gonna say is that the games that they make, like when you think about it, when we all get together, right? And like let's say for example, you're like a group of friends and you play games. You're probably turning on that Switch and you're probably playing Super Smash Brothers, or you're playing Mario Party, or you're playing Mario Tennis or Mario Kart or whatever. They make just like these fun timeless games that you can play for hours and hours and even for years. Like, you know, at one point we were talking about, people panicking about budgets and layoffs, and what you have Nintendo that's just sitting there comfortably printing money off of like 10-year-old games, right? So it's
But
like
then that's another like key thing to note. It's like whereas most other companies they're focused on how we can generate the most amount of revenue for games. You have Nintendo that are still making couch co-op games. They're still making multiplayer games,
They're
but
making
not in the
those
sense of like,
games, but because of the nature of the hardware, they're also, even if they wanted to,
yeah,
there's no conceivable way that they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars developing a game for the Switch when the hardware only allows for so much.
yeah,
So yeah, you can have high budget games, but they're never going to nearly pay as much as Sony pays for, you know, a, if you look at the budget for, let's say, Mario Odyssey, and you compare that to whatever God of War Ragnarok or the first God of War cost, it's got to be a significant amount less.
100%. Yeah.
And yet you're going to be selling the Nintendo title for $80 Canadian years and years past, whereas God of War within 2 years is, maybe down to half price. It's part of their greatest hits. It's this, it's that, you know.
it's just that Nintendo knows how to fully maximize the potential of their consoles and even their handouts. Like the one example that always comes to mind is Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. If you
Mm.
look at how it came out on the Game Boy Advance, and then when Square had remade it kind of like 3D on the PS3, PS4, whatever. What was it like? It was relaunched. Just because it was 3D, it didn't play well. That game still till this day, I think, is best played on the Game Boy Advance with those pixelated graphics, 16-bit or whatever.
Nintendo, man. I mean, they know what their IPs are worth. They know what their hardware is capable of. They know that, they know they're not the most powerful, but I think that's also
Yeah.
what challenges their developers and makes them think a little bit outside the box to achieve the things that they want to, and makes it that these games are so creative because, yeah, you're maybe not getting a graphical powerhouse. like Spider-Man 2. But if you put Spider-Man 2 in front of me, and if you put Tears of the Kingdom, and you ask me which one I'd rather play for the long term, obviously I know I'm going to get a hell of a lot more mileage out of Tears than I am going to get out of Spider-Man 2. So
And also, like, do you guys think like it's an expectation thing, just because like the graphic fidelity, and like that the hardware isn't like as performing? So is like when you like go through your checklist of what makes a game memorable and fun, like is your checklist different for Nintendo games versus, let's say, like a game that
Not
you're playing
not
on
even
Xbox?
because like you look at some of the games that come out on Nintendo and they look amazing, and then you're surprised that it's on the Switch. Like Odyssey,
Hmm.
one of the best looking games I've ever seen. Breath of the Wild as well. Tears
go
of the
play
Kingdom,
go play Luigi's Mansion 3. That game, the animations are insane. So
phenomenal.
when they want to, they can definitely really juice everything out of that hardware, depending on the context of whatever's going on in that game world. But if we're looking at it from a checklist point of view, there's no checklist when I'm comparing the consoles necessarily in terms of hardware or anything. But in the end, it's the games. If I go to a Nintendo
Hmm.
console, I'm not going for the hardware. The hard, if the controller it doubles as a mouse, or it has 3D vibration or all that stuff, those are just bonuses that may or may not work out at some point in time, in the short term, in the long
Right.
term. But
Yeah.
in the end, no one's buying that console because the vibration does this. Maybe for the Switch, obviously, the nature of the hardware, the fact that it's portable, that was a big selling point, yes. But at the end of the day, it is the games. That's all it is.
Yeah. Well, they make games
You
that people
go
just want to play.
you go to a Nintendo console because you will get games that are not only amazing, but you're not going to get those games anywhere else, and that's a fact. You go to a
Exactly.
Sony console. I really want to play Ghost of Yote, but I'm not worried about the fact that it's going to go on PS5 because I know it's bound to come for PC. But am I
Let
ever
me
going to see Zelda on PC? Not through any legal means.
let me ask you this: if you had the choice of picking any console from the last 20 years, anything we would consider retro, more
Mhm.
often than not, you're gonna end up picking a Nintendo console because the library, if you're considering the entire library of a console or a handheld for any company, usually Nintendo has the most amount of games you'd want to play.
I think the only console outside of a Nintendo console that we're looking at, if we're looking at the past 20 years, that you could maybe argue is in line for competition is a
Yeah,
PS2.
PS2. Yeah, I was gonna say the PS2
yeah,
for sure. But hey, look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like Taz is right. Like, they make games people want to play. That's a simple, and like they have a vision and they've been sticking by it. At first I told myself, that it could be a cultural thing too. You know what I mean? But yeah, like we talked about two of our topics, which were like Warner Brothers and Sony, just kind of striking out, and then it kind of ends with like Nintendo, like just not being able to do any wrong, right? Like they're just kind of, you know they're hitting it, on all cylinders. And again, like, this is not, I mean, it's not everything is perfect, right?
I
Like,
mean, to make it
I would
fair,
love for their online store to be better, right?
well, that's it.
I
To
would,
make it fair, they
yeah.
do things that piss me off to no end. This whole
yeah, for
virtual console thing that they're doing, and they're like drip feed you these games, and they're just constantly holding content back for some reason or another. And then all the legal shit that they do with players that just want to be able to play their games or have a little bit
Hmm.
Mhm.
of fun in ways that Nintendo doesn't want them to have fun. Like there's a portion of this company that has a lot to dislike. So that's not
Right.
let's not
We're
go ahead
not
and
we're not
toss that
blind
to the
to their
side.
flaws,
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but
but
but when it comes to why their games sell so well and why this company is doing so well comparatively to the other ones in this day and age, some of the things that we've just outlined are why.
yeah.
Well, great
And that's
discussion,
not quite a high
guys.
score for today, boys and girls.
I was gonna say that if we do have a question, I think for our audience, you know, takeaway would be: is Warner Brothers ever going to recover? Leave
I hope
us,
so. I would love
a comment.
personally to see them
And will
see a
anyone ever catch
new
up to
Batman game.
Nintendo? Yeah, no, I listen. Biggest Batman fan over here, so
Of
I,
course.
I would definitely love that. But
If anyone is gonna ever write in, tell me what WB property you want to see worked on and what you want to see with it. Doesn't have to be AAA. Just give me something interesting. You
Metroidvania
know,
Scooby Doo, let's go.
yo, come on, you're in. You You are you play the Scooby Doo gang. You roll up in the mystery machine into a Castlevania style mansion that shifts and whatever, and you got to use the team to find your way through and solve the mysteries and get to whatever end it has. Like, come on, you're telling me that doesn't sound kind of cool? You know,
I'm
there's
in.
There you
ways
go, WB.
to
There's your next $1 million idea.
there's ideas and there's good games. There's good things to do, man. Let's go back to the days in the SNES when all these IPs had games and maybe they worked and maybe they didn't, but you had a good time either way.
100%.
Yep. So you guys can answer this question, or you guys can also ask us anything else over at notquitehascore@gmail.com. You guys can also leave a comment wherever you're listening to this, on Spotify, Apple Podcast or Music or whatever it's called, and then also on YouTube where you can look at our pretty faces as we're talking. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you the next one.